I'm just here with my good friend Gonzalo, and we're here to do a follow-up on his Sport Chief. And I'll leave a link to a video, the previous video I did with your bike, where we went over all the mods you made to the bike. But Gonzalo's got the bike back now from being tuned, and I really wanted to catch up with Gonzalo to see how the tune went and what his experience was like. Gonzalo, how did it all go?
G'day, Paul. Thank you for having me. Happy. Beyond happy, beyond the expectations I had. The communication with APL was really easy and simple. It was 1 or 2 phone calls, an email stating what modifications the bike had, and then 1 further phone call with APL when they were still trying to hack the ECU module, the Bosch module. Because on my bike, unfortunately, it has the new Euro 5, Euro 6 ECU. It came encrypted. It was just difficult to hack. And I think it took the lads at APL just over a week to hack it before they were able to put it on the Dyno machine and do the tuning on the 3 different ride modes. But yes, it's beyond all my expectations.
I did speak to Gonzalo like a few weeks ago about when you were having issues trying to get into the ECU, and but it's so good to hear that APL have cracked it, and now they can do all Chiefs. Is that right?
My understanding is that they have their proprietary software, whatever. So they are now advertising that they can tune any Indian motorbike.
Let's start with the mods you made to the bike in terms of pipe, cam, all that sort of stuff, and then we'll have a good baseline as to where you went from to where you are now.
Sure. So we'll start with the cams. They are Lloyd's 585 cams. They are the high performance cams. There's 2 different cams. One's they call it torque cam, and the other one's the all balls out performance cam. I went with a 585 performance cam. It has an aftermarket high flow air filter made by. It'll come back to me. Yes, it's called a Voodoo air filter.
Yep.
Made by OTR, I think America, OTR Performance, and it has a Fab 28 2-in-1 exhaust. Why those pieces? When I had put my deposit down for the Chief, I had done a lot of watching YouTube videos of what guys were doing in the USA, and I wanted something different, something unique, so I went with that. And then once we had it all installed, then I had the bike shipped over to APL, and they had the bike there for a couple of weeks, and they shipped it back down to me.
So we got air cleaner, cam, and pipes, and injectors are stock.
Injectors are stock, yes.
And throttle body? Stock. Okay. It's just I'd just been in contact with someone who did injectors and throttle body. Mm-hmm. So you didn't need to do that for the components you'd fitted to the bike?
Correct. Didn't need to. Okay. Don't need to. I think if you go with the Lloyd's big bore kit, I think 131 they do, then you need to upgrade injectors, throttle bodies. You get heavier clutch plates because of the torque increase. It burns out the factory. But no, everything else is stock.
Yeah. Okay. And so how does it run in terms of like fueling and getting onto a throttle? Is it nice and clean right off the bottom?
It is. So it wants to be, you need to keep it at about 1500 RPM or above. So from idle, it idles at about 900 RPM. If you ease off the clutch on first, it'll just take off.
Okay.
Yeah, without any problem. Second gear, you can let off the clutch, give it a bit of throttle, and it'll take off without getting bogged down. So now I'm getting used to just taking off on second gear. Yeah. Yeah, because I find first a little short.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
The way I ride it,
Yeah.
the way I ride it, yeah. So I take off on second now.
Oh.
Yeah, take off on second. It has plenty of torque. I found that in heavy traffic, about 2 weeks ago, I was down the eastern suburbs, coming back on the Monash car park, where it's like a car park. You're doing 10 to 20 kilometers an hour. I found that on standard mode, it was really difficult to manage, clutching it and, wanting to not stall, but the lobe cam and idle, it wasn't working. So I actually flicked it into rain mode or touring mode. And because that changes the throttle response on it, in heavy traffic, I found it an absolute gem. So much easier because it wasn't so snatchy and difficult. So I flicked it over to touring rain mode, and in heavy traffic, stop-go traffic. Yeah, lovely. I've only put it in sport mode once, and it scared me. It scared me. The throttle response, it's just crazy. In standard mode, 6 gear, 70 k's an hour, about 1500 RPM, give it the throttle, the R squats, and it launches. On the freeway, so I think max torque is at about 3,300 RPM.
Okay.
On the freeway, doing 100, it's just on about 2,000 RPM. Doing 110, it's about 2,200. So you can quite comfortably, you don't have to gear down, you just give it the beans on the throttle and it just rides that torque curve to 3,500 RPM, and then the horsepower takes over and it's just so clean, smooth. But on sports mode, it's violent. it's violent. So I ride it with respect.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
I ride it with respect. Yeah.
Sure. So you had two options of cams. You had torque or horsepower, basically.
Yes.
Are you happy with the choice you made?
Absolutely. Absolutely happy. So the torque cams, the Lloyd's torque cams, I don't know what the number specification is, but in America at 60 miles an hour, it's right on that peak torque, which is great for cruising.
Yeah.
Whereas the 585 cams, because it's more horsepower, the torque comes on a little later on the rev range. So peak torque on this bike now is at 3,300. Yeah. And on the freeway, it's sort of between 2,500. So it's still plenty of torque. It just means that, when you give it the beans, when you give it the throttle, it's, got that extra torque peak to get to. And it happens really quickly, and would be before the sort of torque drops and the horsepower takes over.
And did they shift your red line up higher than standard?
I think by 500 RPM, only by 500 RPM.
Because I imagine you wouldn't need to do, like you'd have so much up torque and power once you get over 3.3. Mm-hmm. So what does it red line at now? Because about 5.5, 6?
I think it's 6.3 now.
6.3, okay. Yeah. Have you got a graph showing the before and after?
I don't. Sorry, no graph.
Do you have any peak figures you can quote as to what it was and what they got it up to horsepower-wise and torque-wise?
From the conversation I had with one of the fellas, it was about 119.7 peak horsepower.
Okay.
And about 139, 140 foot-pound of torque.
Okay, I've got to do the conversion because I know the stock's 162 newton meters, so 139. Did you say 140 foot-pound? So that's going to be well over 162 newton meters. Okay. So yeah, that's and flat spots. Did you ride the bike before you had it tuned?
No, I did not. Like brand new, out of the crate, pulled it apart, started modifying it.
And Jeremy here did the cams and everything for you, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, all the work was done here by Jeremy at Ballarat.
And then shipped up to APL for all the tuning.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. The reason I was asking is I wanted to know if you noticed a flat spot with just putting the pipe on and putting the air cleaner on. Is there any flat spots now, or is it just clean right off the bottom?
Clean right off the bottom. Again, because it's got 3 different maps, touring / rain, standard and sport, so 3 separate maps. In standard, it's smooth. It's all, what would you say, linear? It just slowly comes on, yeah, but quick.
Mm-hmm.
In sports mode, it just happens so much quicker.
Yeah,
like I said, it's violent.
Yeah. Because the sport mode is like much more responsive, just as a stock bike.
Yes.
So there's probably 2 or 3 times more.
So that's where my bum gauge.
Yeah.
My bum gauge, where I've had it out on the road, top gear, 70k an hour, give it the throttle. It doesn't bog down. It just, you feel the bike, the rear end squat, and it slingshots. In sport mode, it does exactly the same. It happens quicker and it breaks traction.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. In terms of pricing, what did the whole, I'm just talking tuning,
Mm-hmm.
what did it end up costing you to get it tuned to, to perfection, basically?
Okay, so the cost included the hacking or accessing the ECU, which was time consuming, dyno time, and then test ride. All up about $3,000.
Okay. And so then I would expect then, or imagine then, that if say I took my bike up there, it would be a little bit cheaper because they've already done the getting into the ECU, the NOTA process and things like that, or is it you think around 3,000 is what they would charge?
I don't know.
Yep.
The only baseline that I have is on my Indian Pursuit, when I sent the ECU to Lionheart Racing and I had the Lloyd's ECU flash for its modifications. That was a flat fee, and I think that was about $1,200.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, what I might do, I might actually just ring them up and just hit them up or send them an email and just say what can I expect pricing, sure. Just so that for my viewers, if they're interested in sending their bikes up to APL or down to APL, wherever they are in Australia, they got an idea what they're going to be in for. I actually got to speak to Zach from APL, and Zach is the guy I'd heard about who was an ex-employee from Indian Motorcycle in the USA. And Zach is the man tasked with accessing the ECU and reprogramming the ECU for tuning. I had a really good chat with Zach, and really nice guy, by the way. And he was very helpful and very sharing with information, and really stepped me through what they do at APL and what's involved. Now, I did ask Zach about pricing, and he said it ranges from about $1,400 to $3,000 Australian, and that all depends on the ECU that's installed in your motorcycle. Some of the ECUs are more locked down and more complex than others. Unfortunately for me and Gonzalo, we've got the ECUs which are harder to get into and to access. So that means that I would also be looking at a bill of around $3,000 Australian to have my Indian Chief dyno tuned at APL. Now, I did ask Zach about alternatives like tuners and things like that, and what are they actually doing to the ECU. And Zach explained that there are no tuners, there are no add-ons to their dyno tuning for the Indian Chief ECUs. They go in and actually remap the ECU, which then led me to the question of what happens if I get the bike serviced and they update the ECU. And Zach said it wouldn't affect their tune because the updates that Indian do don't affect the areas that they're remapping. So that was really good to know. And he did explain that there's a much greater benefit of remapping the ECU rather than just adding a tuner. Because I did see that DynoJet have released a bench unlock, and you can now use the Power Vision 3, I believe it is, on the Indian Chief ECU for tuning. But if you go that route, you're just using canned maps, if you like, from DynoJet. Whereas what APL are doing is they're going in and they're fully remapping the ECU in the touring or rain mode, the standard mode, and the sport mode. And whereas I've heard of, and I did mention this, that I've heard of tuners just tuning the bikes at wide open throttle, Zach said, no, that's not what they do. What APL do is they tune the bike at every 200 RPM increments from 0 to redline. And that's the way that they can ensure that you're going to get the best response right throughout the rev range from your motorcycle. Now, it doesn't matter if it's an Indian or a Suzuki or a Harley, it's all the same process at APL. So I thought I'd just throw that in there. I was impressed with what Zach was saying and the way they go about it. I did ask him about timelines, and he said because of the complexity of particularly Gonzalo and my ECUs, our models, it's usually about a 2-week job because they've got to get, I think he said there's 42,000 line items in the ECU they've got to work through. And then you've got the 3 different modes, and then they're tuning at every 200 RPM increment. So it can take 2 or 3 days just to do the remapping. Then there's test rides to ensure that what they've done is working and that the bike's just really nice to ride throughout the rev range in every map. And Zach said you want to allow about 2 weeks really to get the job done. He did say to limit the time that your bike is up there. What you could do is just send him your ECU so he can get started on the motorcycle and then ship the bike up, in a week or so for them just to put the ECU back into the bike and get going from there. So all in all, thank you very much, Zach from APL Performance Bikes in Sydney. You were super helpful, and the information you relayed to me, I'm going to relay to my viewers on what happens when they get their bike dyno tuned at APL. Oh, and there is one other thing. I did ask Zach why Gonzalo didn't get a graph or a chart, and whether it's customary for them to give their customer a graph or a chart after the bike's been dyno tuned. Zach said that they typically do give the customer a before and after dyno graph chart, but in Gonzalo's case, because the bike had just been put together with a high flow air cleaner, a very high flowing exhaust system, and the cam, the combination of those 3 things, the bike wasn't running very well without being tuned. So it just wasn't worth doing a pull or a run. They wanted to get the bike running properly before they did a pass, if you like. So there was no before graph for Gonzalo's bike. But if you get your bike dyno tuned at APL, you will get a before and after graph. Bottom line is you're very happy.
I'm beyond happy. Even whilst, yes, it was an expensive exercise. Would I do it again? Absolutely. And so on top of the $3,000 cost by APL, it was $1,000 to have the bike shipped there and back, $500 each way. So would I do it again? Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So, see, I was thinking if I was going to get it done, I'd probably ride up there, spend a few days up there, and even probably hopefully try and video the process, and make a video out of it. But then if you're going to ride up there and just spend a couple of days and then ride back, you're probably up for $1,000 in fuel, accommodation, anyway. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So, and if you don't have the time, then the shipping up's not a bad way of doing it. And who did the shipping for you?
I don't know the fellow personally. Mark uses a contractor who basically ships bikes throughout Australia. And on his route up the east coast, he picked up my bike from Ballarat, dropped it off in Sydney on his way to Queensland. When he came back down from Queensland down the east coast back to Melbourne, he picked up my bike from APL and brought it down.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way of doing it, isn't it? Like really, $1,000 is when you weigh up. Well, it depends if you want to have a holiday, sure. or if you haven't got time, then yeah, that's the other way of doing it. Geez, I'd love to see the graph. I would love to see the graph, just especially because I know it'll be flat, on the pipe. I'd expect between 2 and 3, and then it'll kick up, and then just as I said before and after tune, I expect to see a big difference. So yeah, and well, you've ridden the standard Chiefs, you know how they go.
Yes. Not long ago, I brought a friend up from Melbourne to test ride a bike. Mark loaned me a bike. It was a dark green, can't remember. It was a 116. It had Reinhardt pipes on it. We rode up to Dalesford and back. And it was nice. It was nice. It was comfortable. I found I was happy with the performance. I hit the speed limiter on the way back deliberately. And yeah, I liked it. It's not a bad bike at all. It's in stock form. But yeah, being me, you always want a little bit extra.
So the pants feel, would you say that it feels twice as powerful than a stock one?
Maybe not twice as powerful, but it's certainly a lot more.
Yeah. Significantly, noticeably more powerful, and I imagine much nicer to ride in terms of throttling and fueling and things like that.
Absolutely.
That's the other question I was going to ask you. I have seen some tuners who are not very good tuners that tune the bike at, it's just wide open and they focus on wide open throttle. But, how many of us ride around wide open throttle all the time? Mm-hmm. Very rarely. Very rarely are you wide open. So a good tuner will go through and make sure that, all the way down the throttle openings, it's perfect. Do you feel that that's what's happened with APL?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. Like I said, I deliberately stressed the bike top gear, 70 k's an hour, just under 1500 RPM, so it's way below the lobe performance of torque. And it doesn't struggle. It doesn't struggle. It squats and just gets on with it. And then on sports mode, it'll spin up the rear wheel because the first thing I went looking for was traction control.
There is none.
There is no traction control like on my Pursuit. So yeah, it's all respect of the wrist.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. It's really good to hear, because if the bike with that cam can pull clean from 1500 RPM, that means they've done their job for sure.
Absolutely. I've been on a couple of rides with friends. They've complained riding behind me. 1, the noise. 2, the smell of fuel, particularly at idle. So it is idling a little rich.
Yep.
But that's the I guess you've got to take the good with the bad. It had the trade-off. It's idling a bit rich, but you know that when it needs the fuel during acceleration, it's not going to be running lean. Yeah. So yeah, but happy. Oh, and it hasn't affected the fuel consumption. Yeah. I'm still getting about 4.8 litres, and this is riding moderate. I call at the speed limit, 4.8 per 100, and I got 220 k's before I had to fill up out of a tank. Yeah. But I'm guessing that if you ride it aggressively on sports mode, I'm sure that those figures would jump up in fuel consumption.
But that's the same for a stock bike too. If you start wailing on it, it's going to use fuel. Yes. Yeah. But, so, for reference, I'm averaging about 4.6 on mine, but I'm not probably riding my bike like you ride your bike.
Okay. Yes. No, I'm happy. I thought that I would be going through a lot more fuel, considering it's idling rich, but if you take into account the amount of times you're sitting at the traffic lights at idle, it's quite a small percentage of the time against riding. Yep. So yeah, happy, super happy.
One more question, heat. Do you finding you're getting more heat from the Fab 28 exhaust system, or is it much the same?
Much the same. So again, comparing it to the stock 116 with the Reinhardt pipes, much much the same, probably a little less. You feel the heat less when you're riding and moving. When you're stuck in traffic, stop-start traffic, you do feel the heat. I feel it behind my calf, but it's not so bad that I need to get my foot off the mini board and move it out the way. But in the near future, I think I might put some black fiberglass wrap through it.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Yeah, I did that to my Scout. The Pursuit doesn't need it, but maybe I'll put some fiberglass wrap over the ceramic coating.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, I won't keep you any longer. Thank you very much, Gonzalo. And this is, as I said, it's going to be fantastic information, and really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me today.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Absolutely.
It's always great catching up with Gonzalo. I really like this guy. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you later.
Thank you, Paul.